Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibiers, welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here. It's Tuesday, day 2 of jury selection in the Chad Daybell trial. Yesterday, 16 moved on. The magic number is 50. We had 8 men and 8 women move into that second phase yesterday. Today will be full of the same, questioning jurors about their exposure to the case. Have they formed an opinion on whether or not Chad is guilty? A lot of people yesterday had. They also really grilled him on their opinions on the death penalty. Some people were all for it. Some people very much against it. Some people on the fence saying that it depends on the case. So we'll see what today brings. I'm streaming it live every day. So if you want a place to chit chat, come on over to my YouTube page, talk to all the Alibiers. We had a great time chatting throughout the process yesterday, and we're going to do it the same. And I'll be live streaming the trial in its entirety. Before we get started, if you're watching on YouTube, you know the drill. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video, share it with your friends, and you can ring my bell if you want notifications of when I post new content. Just click that little bell icon. Music fact of the day. After all these years, the best-selling movie soundtrack of all time still goes to The Bodyguard. Not a bad song on that soundtrack. The slideshow today, just going to be the same. Takes a lot of time to do those for me, and I am crazy busy. Yesterday, when we left off, we were explaining Lori and Chad's previous probations here on Earth and how they've lived on this planet several times. They have been married in past lives. In December of 2018, Zulema tells Chad not only can she control the elements like calling storms and tornadoes, she also has visions. All of this happened because Chad gave her a blessing. December 4th, 2018, Lori does her first podcast, Time to Warrior Up, with Melanie Gibb and Jason Mao. Jason explains in the beginning how he met Lori at the temple and they had an instant connection. He said he knew she was a gatherer and he had to connect her with Melanie Gibb. Investigators note in a podcast in December of 2018, Lori says that suffering leads to salvation. And even though she doesn't want her kids to suffer, she understands they have to in order to see the light. December 5th, Lori, Melanie Gibb, and Chad do a joint podcast on Time to Warrior Up. And the topic of conversation was about the end of times. December 28th, 2018, Chad does some Google searches for Charles Vallow. Julie Rowe also said sometime in late December, Chad told her Tammy would die soon. Now, Melanie Gibb testified at Lori's trial that Chad told Lori he knew years ago that Tammy would die young. January of 2019, Lori and Charles moved to Gilbert, Arizona. Lori refills JJ's medication for the last time, and Lori starts emailing Chad these dance videos. If you're on YouTube, you can see photos of the mirrors that Lori had at every turn in the house. Lori makes one big mistake. She doesn't delete the sent emails to her lover, Chad. So what happens? Charles finds those and ultimately gets suspicious that Lori's having an affair. Also in January of 2019, Melanie Gibb says that Lori told her that Charles and JJ would die in a car accident. Melanie was present when Lori had a phone call with Chad, and this was discussed. Later on, Lori told Melanie Gibb that when Charles didn't die in the accident, that's when his spirit left his body and a dark spirit entered. Lori said the reason he didn't have an accident is because Satan interfered with the plan. Lori also told Gibb that both she and Chad envisioned their spouses would pass away so they could be together. And Melanie also testified that her understanding was because Charles was a dark spirit, he would need to die. January 22nd, 2019, Lori gets an email from Chad with the subject line demon, and it had the name Nick Schneider. He says Charles is a demon now. Charles, according to Chad and Lori, had several demons in him over time because Charles didn't die like Lori envisioned. The first one being Nick Schneider. The next one was Garrett. And then Iplos was the last entity that was in Charles, according to these knuckleheads. Iplos was supposed to be a combination of evil spirits and a very powerful force. Gibb testified at Lori's trial that in January, Lori told her that Chad informed her that Charles had been taken over by a demon, turning him into that dark spirit. If you remember yesterday when we were going through that light dark scale, initially Charles was a light spirit. She also explained that every time the dark spirit was cast from Charles, a new one would enter. Now, what are these castings? I mean, just to sum it up really quickly, there were some other women that were involved initially in these castings and hanging out with the group in general. But over time, either they changed their mind about the direction that this group was headed in, or if Lori didn't like you, she would kind of get rid of you. The castings were done with everybody in a circle, and Lori would be the one to assign the roles during the casting. Lori asked Zulema to use fire as her power, and after the casting, Lori would do a sealing to make that casting final. January 24th, Charles finds that light dark email, which was rating him as well as Lori's family. January 28th, Lori transfers $10,000 out of Charles's business account. She also transfers 2,000 enterprise rental car points to herself. The same day, Chad does a Google search for Ned Schneider, 1996 death, Louisiana. Ned Schneider, Louisiana. Ned Schneider, Louisiana, born 1951, died 1996, and bodies possessed after original occupant dies. These searches, by the way, are 6 months prior to Charles's murder. January 29th, Charles files for an order of protection against Lori after she told him she was a god and she would murder him if he got in the way of her work. That work being gathering the 144,000 for the second coming. January 30th, Lori transfers $25,000 from Charles's business account. That leaves Charles unable to make payroll. At this point, by the way, Charles is in Texas on a business trip and he tells Lori he's coming home that night. Investigators noted there's no indication of any trouble between them prior to this. Charles tries to fly home, but he finds out Lori canceled his ticket. So he had to spend $600 to buy a new one and flew into Arizona. Once he gets to the airport, he finds that his truck is missing from the parking garage. And when he goes home, the house is locked up and empty. There are a lot of body cam videos of Charles talking to police. We touched on this, I believe, in the first episode. And what's so sad is number one, nobody listened to Charles, nobody took him seriously. And also, every single thing that Charles said on these body cam videos pleading for help for Lori ultimately came true and was testified to at Lori's trial way back in January before anybody had been killed. January 30th at 4:06 p.m., Lori texts her mom, her sister Summer, Melanice, and Alex, "Please don't answer the phone if Charles calls you. We're in a big argument and he's looking for people to be on his side. Thank you. I love you all." In an interview with investigators, Lori's oldest son, Colby, said that Lori's version of events was that Charles was having an affair with two women that he was financially supporting in California. He said Lori was telling them, meaning the family, that she was going to be killed for her life insurance money. Charles texts Lori at 4:14 that day. Now, at this point, it's all hit the fan. And he tells her he'll come home tomorrow and get JJ as you asked and go to Louisiana. "I don't want you to destroy me, as you said." Over the phone, Lori tells Charles that she's assigned to carry out the work of the 144,000 at Christ's second coming. 4:33 p.m. that day, Charles calls the Gilbert Police Department from Texas, saying that Lori is acting strange and making threats. He said Lori told him he was Ed Schneider and that she was going to destroy him. Gilbert PD instructed Charles to follow up with Community Bridges, which is a place where you go to have psychiatric evaluations, when he got back from Texas. At 4:38, Charles sends Lori a text, "Please call me." And Lori says, "Too late for words, I'm done." From 6 to 10 p.m., Charles is traveling from Texas back to Arizona. Also at 6 p.m., Lori's iCloud showed deleted cookies for Hyatt hotels. Her coordinates on her phone shows that she was at the Four Points Sheraton in Mesa. She had taken Tylee and JJ. At 8:12 p.m., Chad Google searches Ned Schneider, Louisiana obituary 1997. Lori takes Charles's truck from the airport, and according to Melanie Gibb, Alex drove Lori to the airport to get the truck. Gibb said she was with Lori when Lori took a box of Charles's clothes from the truck and donated those to Goodwill. Lori hid another box of Charles's clothes behind the food storage in the house. Gibb said she asked Lori if she was being a little extreme, and Lori replied, "This is God's will." At 11:38 p.m., Gilbert PD receives an emergency health petition for Lori that was completed by Charles. This was an order for an involuntary hold for a 72-hour observation at Community Bridges. Lori told him he's not Charles and says, "I don't know who you are or what you did with Charles, but I can murder you now with my powers." She also referred to Charles as a dark spirit. January 31st, 2019, Charles's phone number is blocked on Brandon Boudreaux's phone. That's Melaniese's husband at the time. Brandon said the only person who had access to that phone was Melanese. Remember, Lori told all of them not to talk to Charles? Brandon would not find out the number had been blocked until after Charles was murdered by Lori's brother, Alex Cox, and Lori because she helped plan it. At 7:25 a.m., Charles sends Lori a text. Your phone is active. I want no trouble. Just let me have my truck and clothes and I'll leave. And I have no money. We have to pay the rent tomorrow. What should I do? Will you let us use some of the money you took? Otherwise, I'll have to call Peter and tell him we'll be late. At 8:55 a.m. on the 31st, Lori's sister Summer updates Lori on what Charles has been telling the family. She also tells Lori that Charles let a bishop listen into a phone conversation that Charles was having with Lori, where Lori told Charles she would kill him, that she was married to Moroni, and also Charles told her family that he was going to have her temple recommend suspended. Lori's family ultimately took Lori's side and ghosted Charles. He emailed consistently, tried to reach out to people. The same day, Lori takes JJ to school, and Charles shows up while Lori is inside and takes her purse. Now, the reason he did that is so that she wouldn't be able to leave and the police could come pick her up for this involuntary hold. Lori has a spare set of keys and leaves anyway. Later that day, Charles is seen on body cam footage in the parking lot at the hotel where Lori was staying. He found the room key in her purse. He's just pleading for them to help. The cop in the body cam says he pointed out to Charles that his priority should be to check on JJ since he said Lori was unstable. In his notes, he said that Charles didn't seem concerned about JJ's welfare, but at the time, JJ was in school. He was safe at that point. Charles said JJ should just stay in school and then they could pick up Lori when she went to get him that afternoon. The cop told Charles that they're not going to do a sting operation to catch Lori. In his written report, the cop said that Charles's demeanor was strange for someone in his circumstances. Charles was more concerned about the legalities of the money Lori took than Lori's alleged incoherence. This same day, Jason Mao just happens to be parked in Lori's neighborhood. Melanie Gibb sees him and pulls over. Gibb goes on to tell Jason about Charles taking Lori's purse, and he advises that Lori should go file a police report. Later on that day, Lori, Gibb, and Tylee are seen on surveillance inside the Gilbert PD. She didn't want charges filed, but she did want documentation of him taking her purse. I really believe that Lori didn't file charges just in case her and Charles got back together. But you see Lori working her magic on this officer. She tells investigators that Charles cheated on her while he was on these business trips. Throughout this video, you see Tylee, who's sitting next to Lori at times, really becoming the adult in the situation. Lori would get very animated and loud, and when she would kind of reach a certain point, Tylee would very gently lean over and tap her mom's arm. Tylee is the calm to her mom's craziness. Investigators ultimately tell Charles that he could be charged with theft if he did not give Lori her purse back. Charles said he wanted his share of the money Lori took from the account. Charles asked if they were going to serve the commitment papers. The investigator said he didn't know anything about that, but he could bring her property up to the police station and also that petition to get their office to get it verified by the sergeant to be able to take Lori in. Charles agrees to do that. The investigator said in his time with Lori, she was in a normal state of mind, but slightly upset she didn't have her property. She showed no signs of mental distress and was in a good mood. They did verify that petition and they encouraged Lori to talk to the people at Community Bridges. They actually offered her a ride. They discussed with Lori the petition, and Lori was just confused on how she says Charles could just make stuff up and get her involuntarily committed. The officer told her the petition did exist and just encouraged her to take care of it. And if she didn't, he would have to take her without her consent. Lori tells the officer she would go on her own. Tylee promised that she would make sure her mom did. The officer said after this conversation, he did not feel the need to take her in involuntarily. At one point in this interview, the officer is giving Lori tips on how to avoid being picked up for that involuntary hold. February of 2019, Lori tells a friend in Hawaii that she and Tylee had a key to Joe Ryan's apartment, and after not hearing from him for a month, they went to check on him and found him dead. It's odd because a neighbor alerted the apartment complex of a foul odor coming from that apartment. They had maintenance open that door, and an employee of the apartment complex actually found Joe. It's a very odd statement. Either she's trying to get sympathy or maybe she did know Joe Ryan was laying there dead. February 1st, Lori checks herself into community bridges, and a few hours later, she gets the all clear and she's discharged. She does tell Charles where his truck is, which is behind the Hyatt Hotel. She tells him also his clothes were in boxes by the garage. January 4th and 5th, Lori gets two phone numbers that are new. She texts Zulema that this is her new number and to use it. February 4th, Lori and Zulema are texting about their magic powers. And at this point, Lori is gone from Arizona. She doesn't resurface for 72 days. We know part of this time was spent in Hawaii with Tylee. She met up with her friend, April Raymond, who she was close to when she lived there previously. They stayed with April Raymond for a few days. Lori tells April about the podcast she's doing. She tells her about Zulema being able to control the elements. She tells April she is one of the chosen ones and she's part of the 144,000. And she also tells April, I'm here to gather you. The thing is, she told April she wouldn't be able to bring her children. Well, all that aside, April still is like, I'm good. Don't gather me. Nice knowing you. She also told April that Charles was already dead because he had demons living inside him. During these 72 days that she was gone, she also spent time with Alex, her brother in Arizona, and Chad in Idaho. February 6th, Lori tells Zulema that Charles blocks her gifts. Also, Charles finds out that Lori transferred those 2,000 rental car points, and he worries that Lori might flee with JJ. February 8th, Charles files for divorce from Lori. February 11th, Charles leaves town due to fearing for his and JJ's safety. You think about that, y'all. The two of them within a few months would be dead. Charles informs JJ school of this, and in return, a CPS report was made where they informed Protective Services that Lori was gone and Charles had an order of protection against her. February 14th, Charles signs the divorce paperwork, also asking for full custody of JJ as well as the money she took from the accounts and his personal belongings to be returned. The next day, on the 15th, the divorce paperwork is filed electronically. Charles's lawyer also files another document asking for temporary custody of JJ, use of the house and cars, for her to return the money taken and JJ's personal items. Of course, Lori is gone, so she could not be found to be served with those divorce papers. I fully believe that was a lot of the motive of disappearing for that time frame. Also, Alex texts his sister Lori, Ned, which is the evil entity in Charles. He was at the temple yesterday looking for you. He thinks you're staying with me. Lori does not respond to that text. February 20th, someone calls Charles's life insurance company asking for a change of beneficiary form. February 23rd, Charles emails Lori saying that he's never been unfaithful and he would take a polygraph test and hire a PI to clear his name of any wrongdoing. Investigators noted that Charles was loving and supportive to Lori in these messages, and from February until June, Charles expressed interest in working on the marriage and not getting divorced. February 26th, Charles calls Banner Life Insurance to change the password for the beneficiary, but he couldn't provide the password. He said he never set up a password and he was worried somebody fraudulently accessed his account. He wanted to change that beneficiary to his sister, Kay Woodcock. Also, that's JJ's grandmother. He tells the insurance company he has an order of protection against Lori, so they send him another form to fill out. At 11:42 a.m., Charles sends an email to someone in the insurance company about the password on his account. At 2:49 p.m., he sends another email, and this time he copies his sister Kay. He says the password was placed on his account February 20th, and it was not by him. He says in the email, if anything should happen to him before he gets this fixed, his beneficiary is Kay Woodcock. He says, my sister, to take care of JJ. I want nothing to go to Lori or any member of her family. On March 1st, Charles files to dismiss the divorce proceedings. The next day, March 2nd, Charles goes to Lori's sister Summer's house as well as Alex's house looking for Lori. Now, Alex texts Lori that Ned came by and Tylee unleashed on him. He told Lori Charles was driving a rental car. Lori did not respond to this message. The same day, Lori and Zulema are texting about their bodies changing because they're translated beings and they're getting younger, essentially. They got their periods again, and they talk about other physical changes that are just ridiculous. March 3rd, this is the first time investigators can find that Lori traveled to Idaho. March 5th, Lori flies back to Arizona. March 6th, the court formally withdraws Charles's divorce petition that he filed to dismiss on March 1st. March 7th, Charles withdraws JJ from his school in Arizona. He called and asked for a copy of his IEP to be put in his backpack, and they're moving to Houston. An IEP is for special needs kids in school. It sets goals for them throughout the year that they would like to see them meet. And you have meetings periodically throughout the school year with the parents to go through the kids' progress. The same day, Charles forwards the email where Chad rates the family of Lori to his sister, Kay Woodcock. He also emails Lori trying to be reasonable. He offers her the house after he moves out with all the bills paid and asks to work out a schedule where she can see JJ. He tells her to respond by March the 11th. He also notes in the email at this point, she's been gone for 38 days, and he can only conclude she does not want to communicate with JJ. He tells Lori JJ misses his mommy. The same day, Lori texted Alex. Apparently, it's tied to Ned being gone, hopefully today or tomorrow. March 10th, Alex responds, "Love you too. Have fun and get rid of Ned already. And do mom and Shish know about Ned?" Lori responds, "It's not Ned, it's a new one." She's talking about that evil entity that they say is inside Charles. March 11th, that deadline passes for Lori to decide about what Charles proposed in that email to her. Between March 19th and the 21st, Chad and Lori fly from Idaho Falls to Mesa Airport together on the same flight. March 19th, Charles emails Lori again saying, "It's been 49 days since we've heard from you." He asked her to reconsider when it comes to JJ. He says he'll keep the house until the end of April, and he hopes that she will come see her son. At this point, Charles is in Texas. He has a special needs teacher that is homeschooling JJ. He asked Lori to please call JJ. He misses his mommy terribly and can't understand where she went. March 21st, Charles emails JJ's school in Arizona needing some documents from 2019 sent to his new school. He also said Lori has most of the documents, but she's gone and can't be found. But investigators say when this email was sent, Lori was back at the Four Points Sheridan in Mesa, Arizona. March 22nd, Lori stays with Zulema. Melanice, Gibb are there, as well as Serena, Christine, and Nicole. These are three women that were in that very early group. On March 25th, Lori says she'll go see her granddaughter and Tylee. Lori's oldest child, Colby, had a daughter with his wife at the time. This is when Tylee, by the way, is staying at Alex's house. This is in all the chaos where Lori's just kind of transient and hopping around everywhere. Sometime in the spring, Melanie Gibb and Lori were talking on the phone, and Lori refers to Tylee as a zombie. Now, according to Gibb, Tylee overhears this and says, "Not me, Mom." This arose out of Lori requiring Tylee to babysit JJ, and Tylee didn't want to. Lori also told Gibb that Tylee had turned into a zombie when she was 12 or 13. Around the same time, Lori said Tylee had become difficult to work with. In yesterday's episode, we talked about how Chad told Lori this was the time frame where Tylee turned into a zombie when she was 12 or 13. And all it is, Tylee is just a typical teenager, but in the world of Lori and Chad, that makes you a zombie. March 28th, Lori shows up in Arizona at the house. Now, Kay Woodcock and Charles are packing up his things. Charles offers to fly Lori to Houston on March 31st to visit with JJ, but Lori says she can't because she made a commitment to a friend in Hawaii. In spring, Melanice's dad starts to notice a change in her. He said her mood was flat. She would use the terms light and dark spirits, used the term warrior often, and spoke of the second coming a lot. Around April 11th, Lori finally goes to Houston to see JJ. April 21st, Lori registers a Yahoo account under the name Karen Walker. It is kkwalker@yahoo.com. She used a slightly different birth date than her own, but used her own phone number. The physical address was linked to Katy, Texas, where she was staying with Charles at this time. The account was active until June 26, just shortly before Charles's murder. We're going to read the first email that was sent the day it was created to Chad. It says, "Dear Brother Daybell, hi, this is Karen from Aval. I contacted you a couple of weeks ago to see if you would be willing to come to speak to our youth here in Houston, Texas. You said you probably could if there was a way to cover your expenses. Since then, I can't shake the feeling that you need to come share your story, particularly about chasing paradise. We are near the Houston Temple, and this summer, our stake is focusing on family history work. My reason for contacting you again is that we have a stake youth conference planned for all day on Saturday, April 27th. The focus is on the temple, and I know you would energize the kids with your stories. Y'all, there is no way Chad Daybell would energize a bunch of kids with his stories. She goes on to say they expect about 400 kids to attend, including some parents. I know it's extremely short notice, but is there any chance you could come? The High Councilman is currently the main speaker, but he said he would be happy to let you speak instead. My husband and I have been financially blessed, and we would pay for your flight. She talks about having a room attached to their house where he could stay and not be bothered. It says also, my daughter mentioned the youth single adults would love to put together a fireside on Sunday evening. I realize your main goal is to sell books, and that wouldn't be possible at these events, but I know that the interest in your novels would skyrocket here. I'm sorry it's so late. If possible, please let me know as early as in the morning so we can include it in the Sunday announcements. Also, we'd want to get your flights booked. If you're able to do both events, we could fly you in Friday, then depart on Monday. Please let me know if this is possible. We would love it. Karen Walker. An hour later, Chad responds, hello, Karen. Yes, I'll be able to come, so let the wards know. I can talk to you later about arranging the flight. Chad. Messages between Lori and Tylee around this time indicates that Tylee was frustrated being left alone over the weekend and would much rather have been in Arizona. There were other emails sent from this account to Chad, and most were invitations for Chad to listen to a song. Some of those songs just can't get enough because, she got him feeling like Mr. Roboto. Another song, Let's Make Love, and I Dreamed a Dream. So we are going to end there. Lori's back in Texas, staying with Charles at the same time. I mean, you look at the links these people went to further this affair, to further the lies, and you just can't make this stuff up, y'all. And what's tragic ultimately is the end of the day, 4 innocent people are dead because of these delusions and really just their desire to be together and live in this fake Harry Potter world where they can like cast fire and do these spells. It's almost like Chad watched a few action movies and threw some Harry Potter in there. Later on, Chad does refer to himself as feeling like Harry Potter. We'll get to that. In the meantime, hope you guys have a good rest of your day. We will see you soon.